Dr. Gilda Carle came on The Truth a few months ago in at the time that she had published her new book, Real Men Don't Go Woke. Now, the Supreme Court just ruled this week that states can, in fact, ban men from playing in women's sports. And here is Dr. Carl rejoining us on The Truth to help us break it all down. Thank you, Dr. Carl, for coming back on.
Good to see you. Please call me Dr. Gilda.
Okay.
But everyone else calls me.
Well, so the Supreme Court said that states can, in fact, prohibit men from participating in women's sports. Now, so I thought that pretty much put the whole subject to rest. Little did I know, and I just learned this recently, that 23 states permit trans people to play in women's sports. That statistic blew me away. I had no idea.
Me too.
What do you make of this?
Yeah,
I mean, what is going on? It is so irrational. It's like saying to me that we're going to do away with the weight classes in men's boxing because a midweight can't discriminate against a heavyweight, and so that everybody just has to box in the same league. I mean, does that make any sense? Is there any common sense in that that proposal or hypothesis? I mean, it's just stupid to me to say that men can play in women's sports. Oh, they're trans men. So what?
Honestly, John, I don't believe we ought to even be talking about this. I
Ditto.
don't think this is even a factor. Men are men, women are. This is why I wrote this book, Real Men Don't Go Woke. Look what we have done to our men, telling them, well, you can be a woman if you want. They've already dropped out of their manliness to do other kinds of things, like become gay and become non-intimate with women. Every man that has fallen into the woke category has issues. And this is just one additional thing to add to that bundle.
You said something that really fired some neurons. When you talk about, I guess, I don't know how you would characterize that, where you're extracting the alpha from the male, I guess. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's well put. Exactly.
All right. So are you familiar with this new concept of Looksmaxxing?
Of course. Yeah.
So I was not. I mean, I've always been aware. I mean, personally, I told my wife, I said, I was the original Looksmaxxer. I've always cared about my appearance. I've always wanted to present well. But it was something that dudes just didn't talk about, you know? I mean, we coined a term for it 20 years ago and called it metrosexual.
Right.
So that was supposed to be kind of a step toward acceptance, but with a slight disparaging connotation, I think, along with it. But now it's just like full blown Looksmaxxing. And is that depriving men of their masculinity?
Oh, it's just one of the many things. A man came to pick me up for dinner one night and he was wearing so much face makeup. I said, if you're going to wear that stuff on your face, you ought to blend it in. And he had no idea. He had just no idea. But he too.
Well, that to me would be an extreme. Personally, I would never even consider that. I might consider it for my television appearances, but that's different. But I think this notion of trying to engage in self-improvement, I'm struggling to find out what the problem with that is, as long as it doesn't cross lines of societal norms. Like, I mean, I'm not down with dudes wearing makeup. I'm just not. I mean, I don't judge, but
But that's what Looksmaxxing is all about. Yes, you want to take care of yourself. Yes, you want to lift weights, and we all have to do that, men and women. We have to take care of our bodies. We have to take care of our hair. We have to take care of ourselves. There's no question about that. But the Looksmaxxers are the ones who go to extremes, to the point that they too are removing ribs so that they can look thinner. I mean,
No,
it's
that's
got,
stupid. That's
well,
that's
women have been
unhealthy.
doing that, and that's what men are starting to do.
Well, what
Men,
about clavicular? Are you familiar with him?
no, I don't know him.
He is a YouTuber, and his sole lane is Looksmaxxing. And
Oh,
I've
that's
watched. This just came up on my radar within the last week, and I've really gotten kind of focused on what this guy clavicular espouses, and I'll tell you that he is one of the most genuine, authentic people I've ever listened to. I mean, he's not coming at it from a place of vanity. At least he doesn't express that. He just very calmly says that in any context, whether it's social, work, you dating, you pick it, that attractive people have an advantage over unattractive people.
without a
And
doubt. That's
and two
true.
years ago, he was unattractive. And he set upon a course to make himself as attractive as he could. And the transformation is remarkable. And he has become quite a ladies' man, whereas before he couldn't get a phone number. And it is just intriguing to me. I told my 38-year-old son about that, and I couldn't get the word clavicular out of my mouth before he said, "Dad, you can't possibly buy into any of that garbage. He is the worst of the worst. He is just a egocentric maniac." And so I just don't know. It left me wondering what side of that coin to come down on.
Well, it's interesting that the women find this very attractive. I don't know who's going to be in competition for that mirror in the bathroom. When men start to wear makeup, one of my friends said her marriage fell apart as soon as her husband started using her earrings,
Oh,
pierced
geez.
earrings. Uh-huh. And that's what she said. He had lost his sense of masculinity and he became more feminized. So it depends upon what women want. Now, if you're talking about the woke women, they want that. They want a man who doesn't have a spine and a voice so that they can control him. And a lot of men are coming to me. I used to have mostly women in my private practice. Now I'm seeing mostly men because they are in trouble. They have gone woke. They don't to satisfy women, and they don't know what to do with themselves anymore. They don't speak up, and then the women complain all the time. My God, my husband doesn't communicate. He doesn't talk to me. He won't tell me how he feels or what he wants. Well, of course, every time he opens his mouth, you shut him down. And this is what women, certain women, have become used to. And as a result of that, we are losing our men. And they're not happy. Just recently, I was in a car dealership needing to buy a car. And I was telling some of the men, they were all men in there. I was telling the men about this book, Real Men Don't Go Woke, and the suicide rate of men because they're not being supported as men. And they think I have nothing to live for anymore. And these guys had never heard of this. They were guys in their 30s. They'd never heard of any of this. And they were surprised. And one of them, and they're all in that age group. And one of them said, "Yeah, a lot of my friends are woke." I said, "How are they doing in their relationships?" And he said, "Not too well." And he had to think about it first. "Not too well at all." I said, "How could they? They don't know whether they're male or female." That's the problem now. They have
That's
dropped
really
out
sad.
so much. It's so sad. And they don't have to call themselves by any other name but man. And I'm hearing so many men say they're non-binary because they don't want to get into this whole mess between the toxic male versus a real man who is not going to use his fists to get his point across.
We'll get right back to the show after this brief word from our sponsor, Masculine Man Essentials. Look, most deodorants on the shelf are full of aluminum, parabens, and synthetic junk. Masculine Man Essentials goes at it differently. All natural ingredients built for men, and it actually holds up through the whole day long. Whether you're at the office, at the gym, in traffic, or just getting home for the night, try Masculine Man Essentials. I've been using it, and I can tell you, it's the real deal. Head to masculinemanessentials.com, grab yourself a 2-pack or a 4-pack, use the promo code TRUTH at the checkout to save on your first order, and the link is in today's show notes. As you know, we don't put our name on anything that we haven't tried and believe in. So when I tell you about Nessa's Hemp, I want you to listen up. Nessa's Hemp is a Chicago-based company that makes hemp, and it was founded by Anessa. And what she's built is really something. We're talking about clean, high-quality hemp products with no gimmicks, just real ingredients, real transparency, with real results. Whether you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, inflammation, or you just want to add something natural to your wellness routine, Nessa's Hemp has something to offer you. Head over to nessahemp.com, that's Nesas hemp.com, and check out what they've got. Use our promo code TRUTH for a discount just by being our listener. Well, the candidate, the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Texas really evoked very strong reactions when he said God was non-binary. And the fact of the matter is, Dr. Gilda, I consider myself pretty up on the current culture. I don't know what non-binary means.
Well,
What the hell is it? I don't get it.
It's a new word for those of us in this particular ilk.
It's a concept I don't understand. Will you define non-binary for me?
Yeah, it's male and female, and you flow back and forth between male and female. You're not truly identifying as a male. There was one guy who told me, he said, I'm just so sick of the rhetoric of being called toxic that I don't want to hear it anymore. So I am declaring myself as non-binary. I said, that's not an answer. How about standing up for yourself instead?
You think women want non-binary men?
Based upon what I'm hearing, the answer is no.
I think the answer is no. And I say that because I think that forget societal norms and the pressures that might exist in a given culture. The fact of the matter is one thing never goes away. That is the laws of nature and the laws of God.
Yes.
And we're physically and genetically wired completely differently.
Absolutely.
And I think it even connects to our brain, which is the hardest part of relationships. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, or other way around.
You said it right.
It all seems to me, I generally just as a reflex put everything on a continuum. And on one end, I think that maybe our culture did in some ways put too much pressure on men. They've got to exhibit this macho man persona all the time. Well, I'm just speaking personally. I don't want to be the macho man all the time.
No.
I just would be happy to be a male, and that I'm allowed certain leniency for adopting the unattractiveness of some men, just as I'm willing to forgive some of the unattractive traits that we might generalize about women, and we just forgive each other for those. But in the middle, we just create this large group of people that just want to be kind to one another. And one of the things that I hear from young men is that they can really be mistreated by women when they go out in bars and when they try to level up, I think it is, or ascend. I'm getting all this new vocabulary that I think is really funny. But if a woman is not interested in the guy who's trying to level up, she will just be brutal to them. And I'm not sure what purpose that serves either.
Well, a lot of my work is spent with men showing them how to, because men have never been taught this, how to differentiate between these woke, witchy women versus women who could love them and care about them and support them. And they have always been taught, you guys have always been taught that women are women. You know, they come and you decide which ones you like and which ones you don't like, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a clear distinction today between the witchy women on the woke side who hate men, do not want to have to be married to men, do not want to have families, do not want to have children. And they even turned on their favorite star, Taylor Swift, who they used to love because she was one of the woke women, and she had the temerity of getting married to the enemy. And
Oh,
they
like the most alpha male you could pick out, I would say.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And they have called her all kinds of names, including trad wife, traditional wife. And this is very interesting, especially since now we see what her lyrics were. And get this, John. I love her lyrics in one of her songs dedicated to her true love. I love you, I want to marry you, and I want to have children who look like you. Well, these witchy, crazy women said, that is pushing the white gene. Well, excuse me, what was she supposed to have said? I love you, I want to marry you, I want to have children who look Chinese? Excuse me?
Well, I think you could interpret those lyrics a slightly different way. And I want children that look like you because I think you're so handsome. So of course
Obviously, if she's marrying him, yeah, right.
and maybe they have traits of her too. But I guess it would be somewhat sex determinant who the child's going to look like.
But the woke white witches got after her and said that she was pushing the white gene rather than saying, congratulations, we're so glad that you have found somebody and you want to marry that person. They're not happy about that. I hope, in a weird, crazy way, I hope, because she is such a force with young people, I am hoping and praying that this will affect a lot of the young girls who think that she is heaven and earth, and they too will find men to love and treat men beautifully and take a page from Taylor Swift's book now. I hope she pushes that in that direction. But
Well, you and I are on the same page. I'm certainly old school, and it just kind of reminds me of that song from Archie Bunker, that when men were men and gals were gals, or something to that effect. That works well enough for me without differentiating and coming up with all. That clown from Texas that wants to be U.S. senator also said there were 6 different genders. I mean, to me,
I've heard 72.
that is just
Those are in
madness.
my book. 72 genders? Give me a break. I mean, the left will make up anything they think is going to be heard, and heard well for their side. But look how they are proliferating.
That plays right into my other conscious thought that I ask the question routinely: is there something subversive, really subversive, going on in this country, where people, some element is injecting all of these nonsensical ideas that really make people angry, and that it serves no purpose other than to keep us divided and keeps us stirred up, so we can't come together? I mean, I use the example of the work that I've done in Atlanta, in the inner city, where 98% of the population of this zip code is Black. It's the worst zip code in America, worse for HIV per capita, worse for poverty, disease, diabetes, obesity, joblessness, illiteracy, hopelessness. And so 20 years ago, we went in and formed a charity and have worked on the ground in that community. And what I discovered is that the people that we were serving are some of the sweetest, most God-fearing and lovely people I've ever seen, who in my estimation, just drew a bad card in life. They just did not win the gene lottery, I'm sorry for that. And I've spent inordinate amount of time trying to figure out why me, and why am I born into my circumstances and not into theirs, because it could have just as easily happened. And so I just want to love them, and I feel the love from them. But the leadership in that community has fought us tooth and nail at every step. And I asked my friend, the late Ivory Young, who was a city councilman in Atlanta who represented that district, why we got that negative reaction from certain people in leadership coming out of that community. And he said, "Oh, John, that's simple." He said, "They're the poverty pimps. That you're threatening their power base. You're threatening to take away. They want the neighborhood to stay in abject poverty." How sad.
I don't doubt that. I started my career as a 20-year-old teacher in the worst neighborhood in New York, South Bronx. And those kids never had a chance. They were just born into this impoverishment. They didn't have fathers. They didn't have, and their mothers were always drunk, and everywhere around them was drinking and drugs and pregnancies at very young ages, many times caused by rape of somebody they knew or somebody they were related to and whatnot. And I had a need for some reason as a young person, I'm going to save the world. And I had a need to go in and make changes in some of those kids' lives. And I did. And they came back to me later on when they saw me on TV. They said, "If not for you, I would still be in that situation." But before I
Well,
pat
I mean,
myself on the back,
w-
but let me tell you, a lot of
yeah,
these kids ended up dead. So I
so
can't really
sad.
give a lot of credit. I mean, I couldn't save them all.
Well, I grew up in a family with where I had two really good parents who really loved me and sacrificed for me. One of them happened to be an alcoholic. That would be my mother. So I came home to a unhappy household most of the days of my childhood, and it was very difficult. I'll just tell you, I experienced sadness that I never hoped to have to repeat. But I did not let it defeat me. But I also was lucky, as and now as an adult, I've figured it out, and our societal perceptions have changed. She wasn't a bad person. She just happened to suffer from a disease called alcoholism.
Right.
If she had diabetes or cancer or some other disease, the community would have rushed to her side. But
Mhm.
in the '60s, we condemned people that were alcoholics and labeled it as a character flaw. And even my mother, she was insanely um, private and secretive about her problem, and so was my dad. You label him the enabler. And but I can see that so clearly today, because in the '60s in the deep dark South, as the president of a community bank, he told me that if the word got out that his wife was an alcoholic, he may well lose his job. So I'm not saying that for pity. I'm just saying that because I was lucky. My parents took me to church. And while I was bullied and teased and excluded in middle and high school, I really appreciate those people today, because I've worked for the last 50 years to prove the bastards wrong. And I think I have. But so I thank them. But what I'm getting to is that I was able to go to church. And in church, I found love and acceptance, and everything about it felt right to me. And so I don't know if there are children in our audience or people that are listening that have challenges like that. I think that it's incumbent upon us to overcome that adversity. And I don't know about you, Dr. Gilda, but I used to think it was just me. I just used to think I was the only person that had these challenges. But
No.
what I learned is, hell, The people that didn't have those challenges, you can't find them. Everybody walking through this life has adversity, and you
Well,
just got to put on your big boy and big girl pants and learn how to deal with it in an appropriate way. Drugs and alcohol is not the answer.
you also have to recognize that sometimes it's not within somebody's power to do this alone. And
Yes.
that's where support comes in and is very, very helpful to those who are suffering and in need. However, there's a lot that is in our power, that is in our control. And many times people take the easy way out. For example, the men who I've written about, who I talk to, who I counsel, who I speak to, very often they're so disgusted with the way they have been treated. It's awful. Yesterday, I just had a conversation with a man, and he said this is his second marriage, and they have a child, and he's very understanding that in between the lines there is a level of disrespect from his wife. And I said to him, "What are you doing about that?" And his response was, "Nothing. I don't want to lose this relationship." It's just like women staying in battered relationships. What are you doing about it? Well, nothing. I have kids to support, and the guy's providing a paycheck. And there's always an excuse. And there are many, many excuses for everything that we do. But the one most important thing that I have found when working with everybody, from CEO down the line, is that we are in control. We are in more control than we even recognize. And we can make changes if we are willing to get a little bit uncomfortable, to go to new horizons that we've never been to before, to do things we had never tried before. But it takes us, and there's nobody outside our circle who can do this for us. And every time some government program comes in and tries to save the homeless and tries to give them more to live for, these programs collapse because these people aren't ready and they're not interested in making any changes. So, it has to do with who's desirous of making changes. And frankly, having done this work for so many decades, I know that nobody's making any change until they hit rock bottom. When they can't take it anymore, that's the motivating factor.
And that may well be true. Thinking back on my own experience, the second most trouble that I had as a human was when I lost my dad, and I entered a severe state of depression. I was functional. I went to work every day. I continued to raise my kids and be a husband, but I was really sad. And as hard as I worked, I couldn't make it go away. I just could not make it go away. So in that juncture in time, getting psychological help was not accepted. And so it took a lot of inertia for me to overcome it. But I just said, look, if I don't get somebody to help me, I'm never going to be happy again. So I did seek help. And what I discovered is that I did have underlying issues related to being an adult child of an alcoholic parent. And I'm really so grateful that I found a very knowledgeable, competent, capable, really good psychologist that I worked with for the better part of 3 years. I am a much better person for it today. And so rather than being bitter or resentful, I'm proud of the fact that I did take the initiative to go get the help that I needed. And I'm not talking about me. I'm just using me as an example for our listeners that if you are struggling, don't be too proud. Prioritize it. You absolutely can improve your conditions. And I heard you, Dr. Gilda. I mean, I used to be mad at my dad for leaving us in that household. because when I would come home from school and find my mother was severely encumbered uh, because she'd been drinking. The other phenomenon that I experienced, I would say, "Mom, you're drinking again," and she'd say, "I'm not. No, I'm not. I haven't had anything to drink." And so,
Oh,
as a very young
I
child, I
know.
learned not to trust my instincts. I learned to believe what my eyes and ears were telling me wasn't true, and that's a tough one to overcome too.
Well, you mentioned so many different things. First of all, men will not go and ask for help, not unless they are just at the bottom of the barrel. They
Even
just
still today, in
even
today's climate.
oh, especially today. And in the book, Real Men Don't Go Woke, I talk about how men will drop out in order to save themselves. They'll drop away from intimacy with a woman. And I have 10 different ways they do that, including the trans behavior, including the gay behavior, including these boastful guys that you see or toxic guys that you see. That's dropping away from intimacy. The second thing is that I wanted to say when you were discussing your situation was that so many men came to me and said, I have been so depressed. I couldn't go anywhere, didn't want to tell anybody that I was depressed because it's not okay when a man shows that kind of quote weakness. And I couldn't do that. But seeing in your book all the names of these celebrity men, Simon Cowell had to go on medication. He was so depressed. So many different names that were familiar to one man who was telling me this. So many different names and so many different times that they said, thank you. There were others like me.
Mm.
And no, everybody thinks we're alone in our suffering, but there are so many people out there. This shows us we are not alone. And getting help is not only necessary for yourself, but it's necessary for every relationship you have from as a husband, as a worker, an employee, an employer, as a father. That brushes off on every kind of relationship we have when you are able to stand tall and say, this is how I feel. I know this is a problem. I am going to get help. That's a role model for young men. And that's so important.
That is very well put, Dr. Gilda, and it's so enjoyable. I guess I should send you a check for the therapy session today. But I have enjoyed speaking with you very much, and I hope that we have been a source of inspiration and hope for our listeners. And you are certainly living a wonderful life of helping and giving others. Dr. Gilda Carle, she is author of the book, Real Men Don't Go Woke. And gosh, we didn't really get around to talking much about men and women's sports, which was the topic, but I think we've done a good job of.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
that topic all borders on all the things that we were talking about. So it was perfect.
Thank you, Dr. Gilda. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, John. Bye.